Just another beautiful day in Colorado. Today we're going to be fishing out east on one of my friend's private property. So, these ponds are located about 30 minutes away from Sugar City. They were once filled with lots of bass, but it looks like the bass are starting to die off and they're actually being replaced with carp. It also looks like there's quite a few people trespassing on the property and fishing here illegally. I'm pretty sure we're actually the only group of people that are allowed to fish here legally, other than the property owners themselves. So whenever we come out here, we like to keep score of who caught the most fish on which lake. There's 4 lakes in total. Right now we're on the first lake. You can also catch crappie, bluegill, catfish. The lakes are also slowly being overfilled with tumbleweeds. The lakes were created about 14 years ago when there were massive floods coming through this part of Colorado. And what ended up happening is that the Arkansas River ended up overflowing and spilling over into the fields. Bass fishing in the eastern fields of Colorado might not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the state's outdoor activities, but for those in the know, it's one of the hidden gems of the region, offering a unique experience that combines the thrill of bass fishing with the rugged charm of the Great Plains. Eastern Colorado may be more famous for its wide open spaces, farms, and ranches, but it has a number of lakes, reservoirs, and ponds where bass fishing thrives. Eastern Colorado's flat landscape is interrupted by a series of small rivers, reservoirs, and man made lakes that provide excellent opportunities for bass fishing. While the terrain may not have the towering mountains that Colorado's western slopes are known for, the calm, relatively shallow waters of these bodies create an ideal environment for largemouth and smallmouth bass to flourish. Fishermen flock to these places, like Jumbo Reservoir near Sterling, Cherry Creek Reservoir near Aurora, and Pueblo Reservoir, each offering unique challenges and rewards for those in search of the perfect catch. What makes bass fishing in eastern Colorado so intriguing is the combination of tranquility and unpredictability that these waters offer. The reservoirs are often less crowded compared to those in the mountains or more popular spots, allowing for a more peaceful fishing experience. There's something serene about casting your line into the calm water and watching the ripples fade out over the horizon, especially when the sun is just beginning to rise. The landscape around you is wide open and flat, with farms, dry grasslands, and distant mountain views creating a sense of vastness that feels almost meditative. But the fishing isn't always easy. Bass are crafty creatures, and the waters of eastern Colorado require patience, skill, and strategy. Largemouth bass, in particular, are known for hiding in the submerged structures around the edges of reservoirs, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Knowing where to find them is as much about understanding the lay of the land as it is about choosing the right bait. Some anglers prefer to work the shallow coves with soft plastics, while others use crankbaits or spinners to attract the bass lurking just beneath the surface. The local fishing community often swaps tips, and after a successful trip, you'll find the stories and advice flowing just as fast as the fish. Another draw for bass fishermen is the unique seasonal rhythm that governs the region. Spring and early summer are prime times for bass fishing in eastern Colorado, as the fish are more active and tend to congregate around the shallow areas to spawn. The bite can be fierce during this period, and it's not uncommon to reel in a big one. But as summer heats up, the fishing can slow down, with the bass retreating to deeper and cooler parts of the lakes. This is where local knowledge comes in handy, as finding the right depth and water temperature is key to success. For those who enjoy the solitude of fishing, the open spaces of eastern Colorado are a big appeal. It's not unusual to have an entire lake to yourself, particularly in the early mornings or during the weekdays. The sense of quiet that comes with fishing in this part of the state makes it more than just a sport. It's an escape from the hustle and bustle of daily life. The only sounds you'll hear are the chirping of birds, the hum of insects, and the occasional splash of a fish leaping out the water. Bass fishing in eastern Colorado is more than just a way to catch fish. It's an immersion into the region's beauty and a reminder of the simple joys of nature. Whether you're a seasoned angler or a first time fisherman, the lakes and reservoirs of this flat, expansive region offer a perfect place to cast a line, learn a bit about the land, and appreciate the art of fishing. It's a hidden treasure of Colorado that offers both the challenge and the peace that come with fishing in the wide open spaces of the plains. Navigating the eastern fields of Colorado on foot is like stepping into a different world, one that's often overlooked by travelers rushing through the state. The vast open plains stretch out endlessly, offering a landscape that feels both liberating and humbling. At the same time, if you're used to hiking in the mountains, the flat terrain of the eastern part of the state might seem like a stark contrast. But once you embrace the quiet beauty of the prairie, you realize that there's something incredibly special about walking across these wide, expansive fields. At first glance, the fields of eastern Colorado can seem monotonous, with miles of grasslands, wheat fields, and sparse brush that appear to go on forever. There's no towering peak or dramatic canyon to guide you, just an endless horizon and a sky that seems to stretch on forever. But this is where the magic lies. The vastness of the land gives you a sense of freedom that's hard to find anywhere else. The silence is profound, broken only by the occasional rustling of the wind through the tall grasses or the distant call of a bird. It's a far cry from the hustle and bustle of city life, and you quickly realize that the real beauty of eastern Colorado is in the small, subtle details. The way the sun casts long shadows across the land, or the patterns in the dirt that tell you the story of the animals that roam here. The key to navigating the fields on foot is to embrace the simplicity of the landscape. There are no well-marked trails or complex terrain to worry about, just open space. Of course, this can be both a blessing and a challenge. On one hand, it's easy to get a sense of direction since the land is so flat. The big sky gives you a constant point of reference, and it's hard to get lost when you can see for miles in every direction. But on the other hand, the monotony of the landscape can make it difficult to know exactly where you're going. In the absence of trails or obvious landmarks, it's easy to lose track of time or distance, especially when you're just walking across fields of knee-high grasses and flowers. One of the most striking features of eastern Colorado's landscape is the way the seasons change the fields. In the spring and early summer, the land comes alive with colors. The grasses are lush and green, and the wildflowers dot the fields, creating a vibrant patchwork of yellow, purple, and red. Walking through this landscape during those months feels like being enveloped in a living painting. In contrast, during the fall and winter, the fields take on a quieter, more muted appearance. The golden hues of autumn give way to the browns and grays of winter, and the wind sweeps across the empty fields with an almost eerie stillness. It's a stark yet beautiful reminder of the cyclical nature of the life on the plains. Despite the lack of dramatic topography, the fields of eastern Colorado are far from boring. The wildlife here is as diverse as the terrain itself. As you walk through the fields, you might spot a group of antelope grazing in the distance, or see the occasional deer darting through the brush. Birds are plentiful, from red-tailed hawks soaring overhead to pheasants and quail fluttering among the grasses. The beauty of walking here lies in the chance to connect with nature in a way that's rare in more populated parts of the country. There's no rush, no need to reach a summit or complete a loop. The journey itself is the reward. The wind is another constant companion in eastern Colorado. On foot, you can feel it sweep across the plains in waves, sometimes gentle and soothing, other times howling fiercely across the open fields. It's a reminder of how exposed you are in this wide open land. It's easy to forget how small you are when surrounded by the towering mountains or thick forests. But here in the flat expanses of eastern Colorado, the wind and the sky make you realize just how vast the world really is. Walking through the fields also means encountering the land's subtle history. You might come across an old fence post, a rusty piece of farming equipment, half buried in dirt, or the remains of a long abandoned homestead. These little relics tell the story of people who once tried to tame this land. There's a kind of quiet reverence in those moments when you realize that you're walking in the footsteps of those who came before you, trying to make a life in this challenging yet beautiful place. Navigating the fields of eastern Colorado on foot isn't about rushing to the next destination or conquering a tough trail. It's about slowing down, embracing the space around you, and taking in the natural beauty that often goes unnoticed. The land may be flat, the fields may seem endless, but there's a profound peace in that simplicity. Whether you're walking for exercise, exploring the wilderness, or just escaping from the world for a little while, the fields of eastern Colorado offer a unique experience that's as rich in its quiet moments as it is in its wide open views. The wildlife in the eastern fields of Colorado might not have the grandeur of mountain lions stalking the Rocky Mountains or elk wandering through dense forests, but there's something equally fascinating about the creatures that call the plains home. In fact, the fields of eastern Colorado have a quiet charm that draws a surprising variety of wildlife, from small birds and mammals to larger grazers and predators. The wild inhabitants here have adopted the open, often harsh environment, making the region an interesting spot for animal lovers and nature enthusiasts alike. The first thing you notice about the fields is how much life there is. Even though the landscape can seem vast and barren at first, the open plains, with their grasses swaying in the wind, provide perfect hiding spots for all kinds of critters. You don't always see them right away, but if you stop and listen, you'll hear them. The rustling in the tall grass, the soft calls of birds, or the occasional scurry of a creature darting from one patch of cover to another. Eastern Colorado is full of these little moments, where life is quietly thriving just out of sight. One of the most iconic creatures of this region is the pronghorn antelope. These sleek, fast animals are perfectly built for life on the open plains, with long, powerful legs that help them outrun predators and cover vast distances in search of food and water. Spotting a pronghorn is a real treat. They're often seen grazing in large groups, their tan bodies standing out against the golden grass of the fields. Pronghorns are known for their speed, and if you're lucky enough to see one take off at full sprint, it's a reminder of how well suited they are to this land. While they're not as common as deer, pronghorns are a signature species of the eastern Colorado plains, and spotting one feels like a little victory. Alongside the pronghorns, eastern Colorado is home to a surprising variety of smaller mammals. Foxes, coyotes, and even the occasional bobcat roam the fields, often in search of food. Coyotes are especially common and can be heard howling at night, adding a bit of wild soundtrack to the vast quiet of the plains. They're opportunistic feeders, often hunting in pairs or small groups, and they've adapted well to life in the open fields. Bobcats are a bit more elusive, but they can be spotted if you're lucky. Their spotted fur blending perfectly with the brush and grasses as they sneak through the landscape. If you're a bird watcher, eastern Colorado is a paradise. The open fields are home to a wealth of bird species, from the swooping red-tailed hawks that patrol the skies looking for prey to the little songbirds flitting through the grass. One of the most striking birds is the pheasant, with its colorful plumage and distinctive call. Pheasants are often found in the tall grasses, and their flight can be sudden and startling. As they burst from the underbrush, eastern Colorado also hosts a variety of migratory birds, making the region a great stop for bird watching, especially in the spring and fall when the skies are full of traveling flocks. The skies above the plains aren't just home to hawks and eagles. There are also plenty of smaller creatures that thrive in the air. Swallows, kestrels, and even barn owls make their homes in the wide open fields. The air seems alive with their activity, especially during the warmer months. Swallows swoop and dive through the air, snatching up insects, while kestrels perch on power lines, scanning the ground for small rodents. The barn owl, with its ghostly appearance, is another creature that you might encounter if you're lucky enough to be out at dusk. Their silent flight and eerie call are both a bit haunting and mesmerizing. Of course, no discussion of wildlife in eastern Colorado would be complete without mentioning the smaller creatures that keep everything in balance. There are plenty of rodents, including squirrels, rabbits, and ground squirrels, which are key food source for many of the region's predators. The plains are also home to a variety of reptiles and amphibians. If you're walking through the fields in the warmer months, you might spot a western box turtle or a lizard basking in the sun. Snakes are also common, though they tend to stay out of sight unless disturbed. The most common species are bull snakes and garter snakes, both non venomous and generally harmless, though they can startle you if you're not paying attention. Despite the often dry, open landscape, water is a vital part of the eastern Colorado ecosystem. There are small ponds, rivers, and reservoirs scattered throughout the region, which attract a range of animals from deer to birds who come to drink and feed. The presence of water is crucial to the survival of wildlife in this area, and it creates small pockets of rich biodiversity in what might otherwise seem like an arid environment. Walking through the fields of eastern Colorado, you quickly realize how resilient the wildlife is. The animals that live here have adapted to the harsh winds, the dry summers, and the bitter cold winters. The fields are their home, and they thrive in the wide openness, often unseen but always present. Whether it's the flash of a pronghorn running across the field or the silent flight of a hawk circling high above, there's always something happening in the fields of eastern Colorado. It's a place where life is subtle but abundant, and where every step through the grass could bring a new discovery. The history of the eastern plains of Colorado is a fascinating story of resilience, adaptation, and transformation. This vast, often overlooked region has seen centuries of change, from its early days as a land of indigenous peoples to the arrival of European settlers and the eventual establishment of the agricultural and ranching communities that define it today. I did end up catching a 3.5 pound bass out of this pond, but I ended up losing the footage. So, what I'm going to show you is after I caught him. He was a really good fighter, and I ended up catching him immediately after my other fishing partner lost him, so I'm going to be keeping him for dinner. When you first arrive in eastern Colorado, the most striking feature is the horizon. There's something almost surreal about how far you can see. On clear days, the sky seems to stretch endlessly, and the flat expanse of grasslands seems to melt into the horizon. It snowed for the past 2 weeks out here, so we ended up hitting a soft patch of dirt and stranding ourselves whenever we tried to leave. After hours of digging, we finally managed to free ourselves, only to hit a patch of mud and end up having to stay till the next morning. There's something about being stranded in a muddy field that seems to put everything into perspective. At first, it feels like an inconvenience, maybe even a minor disaster, but as time stretches on, it becomes more of a strange adventure. You get out of the truck, hoping to assess the situation. The moment your feet hit the ground, you realize just how bad it is. The mud is thick, sticky, and way deeper than you thought. It clings to your shoes, making each step feel like you're trudging through glue. You're probably cursing under your breath, thinking, why didn't I just take the main road? But it's too late to dwell on that. You've got to go figure something out if you're going to get that truck moving again. We ended up heading back down to the third lake to do some fishing right before our tow truck came. Our tow truck was able to help us get out, but the tow truck itself did get stuck, so we had to return the favor. The muddy patch of land that we ended up hitting is completely surrounded with dry ground, and as you can see, there was also a naturally occurring well that was spilling out.